So I'm Andre Ristaino. I'm Director of Alliances and Consortia at ISA. So I'm just going to kind of give a nickel tour of all the different activities that ISA is engaged in related to cybersecurity. Um, Before I launch into it, I will just mention one thing that I learned, and a lot of my colleagues are kind of pushing this concept that came from INL called consequence-driven cyber-informed engineering. Basically, we're all chasing our systems and our processes and policies and procedures to try to secure as much as we can. Obviously, cybersecurity is like a long fence that goes over the horizon, so you don't even know where the holes are. But the key thing is to focus on your most critical assets, most critical parts of the operation, and look at the ones that have high consequences, and you want to protect against that. And so, for instance, if you're in the electric sector, power generation, it takes many, many years to stand up generation capability, or long lead times for transformers, maybe 2 years. So, I mean, they're in the business where they have hurricanes and all sorts of things damaging their infrastructure on a daily basis. So that's nothing new, but taking out something big takes them out of business for a while. So each of you have your own businesses and operations, and something's really, really important in that. And so that should be a priority. So use the arrows.
Yep.
All right. So ISA, who are we? We're a professional automation engineering society with 35 to 40,000 members. We're global. We're in 44 countries. We do conferences, continuing education for the profession. We do publications. But we're also an ANSI accredited standards development organization. So we've published about 150 standards, and there's a couple that are near and dear to me. One is ISA 100 wireless, but I'm not talking about that in this presentation. But the set of standards that Eric just described, the ISA 62443 standards that are internationalized as IEC 62443. So in my scope of responsibilities, there are several consortiums, and so to simply state what their missions are, there's Logic. Logic is a group of oil and gas majors, all of them, and they're working in partnership with the DHS Science and Technology Directorate, doing research and development on automation that affects the oil and gas industry. We recently started the ISA Global Cybersecurity Alliance, and so its mission, simply stated, is to bridge the gap between those 15 standards and 1,000 pages of documents that civilians shouldn't have to read, and the adoption of them. How do you use them? What do you do on Monday morning when you show up to work? So we have a number of activities that we're engaged in to bridge that gap. I'll talk about that a little bit more. And ISA Secure, it's a cybersecurity certification scheme based on the 62443 standards. It was started in 2007. We did our first certification in 2010. And it is intended to certify commercial off-the-shelf automation and control system products. So it's supplier focused. Recently, we did a pivot, and we started looking at end user sites, because if you recall, the standards are grouped by stakeholders. So there's the product suppliers on the front end, there's integrator and service providers in the middle, and then on the back end of the life cycle or the standards, there's a number of them that are specific to asset owner operators. And so we're looking at doing facility certification. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So again, Logic, R&D for oil and gas. The current project they're working on is assessing vulnerabilities in safety systems. And in the project roadmap, they're now looking at doing research on control systems for subsea operations for the upstream exploration. So Logic, the results of that work are published on the Logic website, which is under the ISA Automation Federation, but that they are made available. There's some sensitive weaponizable discoveries that aren't going to be published, but it's really good information, can be used as a basis for circling back and feeding back into the standards or certification programs. So again, ISA Secure, we certify systems, components, and the security development lifecycle at the supplier site. One of our goals this year is to integrate what we're doing in ISA Secure with the activities in the ISA Global Cybersecurity Alliance. We do our certifications through a network of labs that are already established. Most of you are probably familiar with, like TUV Rhineland, TUV Sud. So we have 3 labs online, one in the US, one in Germany, and one in Japan. It's a governmental lab. We have 5 more coming online, 2 in Singapore, DNVGL and TUV Sud, and 2 in the Netherlands, and CSA Group in Canada. So other things that we're doing, we try to stay involved and engaged. We have an agreement with the Open Process Automation Forum to certify their prototype components and work with them on developing requirements for this new vision or new category of automation. We're also partnering with NEMA and a commercial real estate industry group to launch a facility certification for building management systems. We did a study in 2016 with a working group from that industry to confirm that the standards were usable for building management technology. Of course, the answer was yes, but we don't like to make claims without having the subject matter experts involved. So these are supporters for ISA Secure, past and present. It's a who's who in the big oil industry and all the majors in tier 1 suppliers. We have a first-rate group of labs that are doing certifications on our behalf. You'll notice that Johnson Controls was added. That was part of our building management system study. Johnson Controls is a $30 billion a year BMS provider. Okay, so this is a new initiative that we've been working on for about a year now. It's a DoD-inspired initiative, but it's to be stood up in the private sector. So the Department of Defense was tasked with evaluating the security of the building technology at all their different sites. So they have about $1 trillion of real estate, 550,000 buildings. They developed their requirements and then recognized that they weren't funded for an auditing and assessment function, and it's huge. So they turned to private industry and said, hey, would you all be willing to lead this? And so NEMA, and it's actually myself from ISA and a number of the supplier members said, okay, we're gonna push this forward and see where it goes. We think this has got legs. So this is a site certification scheme to evaluate the building technology, building by building, and give it a rating. Their model looked like the LEED program for energy efficiency, except for that has some issues that make it undesirable, but this would be a certification. We have levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the standard. If they want to call it bronze, silver, gold, platinum, that's fine, but we would be using the standard as a basis. So the idea is to use the 62443 standards and rate the buildings, and then it's up to the owner as to whether they're going to publish that or not. So you don't want to tempt people by claiming you're platinum and make yourself a target. So again, the ISA Global Cybersecurity Alliance, this is a big deal. The standards are awesome standards. There aren't any others around that have the coverage and the organization that the 62443 standards have. But without some type of a program for getting them out there and moving the marketplace, they become handsome shelfware. And so there are a number of organizations who really felt that ISA has a pivotal role in cybersecurity for automation and control systems, and they encouraged us to stand up such a group. And so our goals are awareness and outreach, let people know the standards are out there, activities to promote adoption, also enhance prevention of cyber incidents and compliance to good practices, and of course, training and education. So you'll see us developing a lot of derivative products and communication about derivative products for use in adoption and communication just for awareness, and we're doing this globally. So we had 25 members as of the second half of last year. We just started in July of last year, and we expect to add 50 more in 2020. We're doing about one a week. We're working with industry groups, so we added the ISA industry groups, Logic, ISA Secure. We have a liaison to ISA 99. We're in discussion with AFPM, ACC, and others. And again, we want to be global. It's important for us to show that we're adding value. So we have projects that are in the pipeline. So we probably have 40 or so potential projects on the roadmap. These are just a few that we've started. Of course, we have a crosswalk, like Eric mentioned. We had to do just one more. But that project, we're going to look at what's already been done to the extent possible. And it might be that we're just publishing a crosswalk of crosswalks. But we're doing overlays on what are the standards, how are they applicable to each of the different stakeholder groups, asset owners, service providers, and product suppliers. We're also, we want to encourage governments in the various regions like the EU and the USA to use 62443 as their reference standard for cybersecurity and their regulation. It's in some geographies, it's pretty well known, and others not so much. And it would be a shame to see governments or regulatory authorities trying to invent their own language when something like 62443 already exists. So also on the roadmap are industry overlays, like for building management systems, medical, and other industry sectors. The standards are written as a technology horizontal applicable to a lot of sectors, but you need to take the standards and develop some products that make, in a language that speaks to the different professionals in the various sectors. One of the things I think Eric didn't mention was that the standards are submitted to the IEC for internationalization. And in that committee, the standard was proposed, and it's going through that it'll be a technology horizontal. Is that what they call it?
Yeah, they call it horizontal standard. Yeah.
Right. So what that means is that if there's an industry sector developing some functional standards that includes a cybersecurity element in it, the default is that standard should reference the 62443 standards rather than them writing something that's competing with or duplicative of it. So that's huge. That's a really big deal. It'll provide a lot of economies. So what else are we doing? The Speakers Bureau. Just for promoting the standards, promoting good practices, et cetera. We have a lot of members with great people, and so we want to orchestrate, more communication about cybersecurity. And so today, members of the ISA GCA, you can see they represent a who's who in both the tier one suppliers for automation. And you also see a lot of the leading edge cybersecurity technology providers like the Nozomis and Clarities and a bunch more. We do have, and there's labs and consultancies. The organization's open to government groups and industry groups. So you notice INL joined. So, and so they're looking for input from us about where they want to go, where they should be investing in special projects and R&D. And so we expect to expand, into other government entities. We're talking with METI and the IPA in Japan, and there's more. So I think that's it. So a lot of pokers in the fire, but we're trying to stay relevant, and there are a lot of folks that are joining in and providing people and funding to secure automation that affects our everyday lives.